This week kicks off a two-part series about feeding our family on the road and at home. This week's guest is Natalie Johnson. She's a mom of five who has all kinds of advice for eating most meals home cooked, even while you're traveling. I'm Carly Hill, and this is the Debt Free Mom Podcast. Natalie, welcome to the Debt Free Mom Podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So before we jump into our big topic, which I know is both timely for the summer and also raises a lot of questions for people, can you just tell us who you are, what you do, what your account is all about?
Sure. Hi, I'm Natalie, and I do Home Begins with Love on Instagram. And I started my account a little over a year and a half ago to basically share my journey with homeschooling, home cooking, and I like to say prioritizing our family time together. So spending time together as a family, which involves a lot of food, basically.
Always. Nothing happens without food, right?
No, everyone needs to eat all the time.
Yes, absolutely. So you reached out to me to be on the show when we had been sharing about our vacation and my process of trying to have fun with eating out and get treats while we're on vacation, but also not feel like every single meal has to be a meal out. That's a big thing that I feel passionately about is I think we can actually travel more and enjoy our time more if we're not trying to budget for 6 people eating every meal out or something like that. It's just such a huge expense. We're going to break the episode into a few different categories. We're going to talk first about what we do while we're trying to get somewhere, whether that's driving or flying, and then what do we actually do related to food once we get there. So I'm curious, is your family more of a flying family or a driving family?
I have 5 kids, and so my family is 100% a road trip family. We actually, some of my children have never been on an airplane. It's just too expensive for us.
Yeah.
So we drive pretty much everywhere. In fact, we're ramping up for next week. We're doing our big East Coast road trip. So I'm literally in the thick of right now prepping for that drive and prepping all the food we're going to use for that trip. I would love to fly more. It's just not possible right now.
No, I 100% agree. We're a driving family too. We have for the same reasons. I also feel like not just the cost, but it's also there's so many things that I like to bring with us, like especially related to cooking. I'll bring my griddle or I'll bring my air fryer or whatever that you just can't do when you're flying. So I also prefer to drive. It's a hot button issue because there are people that are like, oh, longer than 6 hours, I would never drive. And I'm over here driving like 17 hours or whatever.
You live in Peoria, right?
Yes.
I lived there for 12 years, actually. Fun fact.
Okay. That's so
we lived in
funny.
Peoria for 12 years. We lived there and then we moved here to Ohio back in 2019. So I know like the Midwest, I still consider like Ohio to be Midwest, but like it's now we can drive to the East Coast in about 10 hours, which to me is like, it's a day.
Amazing. Yeah. No. Yeah. If I look at it and I'm like, if something is like less than 14 hours, I'm like, that's one day. That's one day.
100%. Yeah. I'd much rather just
get
up in the morning and drive than have to stay in a random hotel overnight and then keep driving.
Yep. Yep. And I feel like the coasts are the ones that are much less willing to do driving.
Yes.
Like anytime I talk about that, I hear from people that are like, I literally don't think I've driven longer than 6 hours or something. I think because when we're in the Midwest, we're so far from mountains or ocean that it's like, in order to get to those things, we have to drive versus if you live in California, you can have both of those within an hour of your house or whatever.
I know.
Okay. So I'm also a big driving family. So let's talk about that first. When we're driving on the road, what do you do you wake up early in the morning and you hit the road? What are those breakfast and lunch? Like how often do you stop versus prep your own food?
Sure. So what I do is actually even before we get in that morning, I've done a lot of prep work typically the week before because it depends on, like we talked about, what kind of trip this is going to be. But I always prep. The morning of the trip, I'm not cooking any food. Everything's been prepped. Everything is going into a cooler that if we're going to bring stuff. And typically we get up and I have breakfast for the kids in the car in these little like to-go containers that I can stack up when we're done eating. And then I've prepped all the food for the day. Now we will sometimes randomly stop at McDonald's to get like a couple burgers and fries. But to me, that's actually not like a full meal because most of my kids, they want some fruits, some veggies, some just things they're used to eating. They're not used to eating like a Happy Meal for lunch. This is not what my family normally does. And also it's so expensive. We actually went traveling a couple weeks ago. We were up in Chicago and on the drive home, I didn't have any food because we'd been staying in a very regular hotel. We didn't have a kitchen or anything. And we had to stop for a lunch and it was over $100. Like for just regular fast food.
Yep.
For my family of 7 people.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Typically I'm prepping well in advance depending on the type of trip for food we're going to bring. What about you?
Yeah. So we do something similar. I almost never find it worth buying breakfast because I feel like some of the kids, like just when they wake up, they're not very hungry to begin with. So they're like, half a muffin and then they're like, I don't want this anymore, or
Yeah.
something like that. So I definitely do breakfast, or like I'll bake a bunch of mini muffins or granola bars and have fruit or whatever. And I find that what they actually end up eating is so small that I'm so glad that I didn't spend $6 on a breakfast sandwich or something.
Yes.
So I definitely do that for breakfast and lunch. Sometimes now, what age range are your kids?
My youngest is 2 and my oldest is 15.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I have a very
So
wide range.
yes, yep. Very, I'm like right squeezed in the middle of that. I'm
Yeah.
4 to 10. So I find that the kids sometimes, like Kyle and I, will want to eat something for lunch that the kids just don't like, or we're like, oh, we'll
Mhm.
get something. So I do generally split it. That's another hot button issue when I buy, like when I have packed lunches for the kids and Kyle and I grab salads or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
But our kids never seem to complain about that because they generally like the comfort foods from home that they're used to. Like you said, like the
Yep.
packed lunch is just familiar to them. And so I will hodgepodge it together with those, like adults having one thing and kids having one thing. But especially as we're driving too, I also find that if we're sitting in the car all day long, they're just not burning energy. They're not like up and
Exactly.
moving. And so by like middle of the day, it's a couple snacks here or there, and they're not really that hungry just because they haven't been moving. So that's another reason for me that I'm not going to toss $100 at Chick-fil-A when I'm like they're
Oh,
going to
yeah.
pick at it or something. So yeah, on the road specifically, we definitely are making sure to like have things from home, be prepared for those things that we already have, and then not, maybe, like you said, maybe stop one time during the day.
One thing I always bring in my car are those red Solo cups. I have a whole stack I always travel with, and then it is the best way to pass out something because I'm passing
Hmm.
things back to the third row of my
Yep.
van, and I can put anything in there. Like my kids are they love mini cucumbers, those little tiny
Hmm.
like cucumbers.
Yeah.
I'll pop that in there, a couple crackers, a slice of
Hmm.
string cheese. There's
Hmm.
your snack. It's all in a
Yep.
little cup, so they're not throwing back
Yep.
things.
It fits in their
So
cup holder when they're
exactly.
sitting in the van. Yeah.
I bring Solo cups and a roll of paper towels. That's like
Yep.
anytime we go on a trip, those are the 2 things we must have in the car.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if you had any. So when you pack a breakfast or a lunch in the individual containers, what kind of things are your like ice packs or coolers? What do you have to keep the food that you're traveling with cool?
Sure, so I'm very lucky. I drive a 2012 Honda Odyssey, and my middle console can come out, which I know the
Oh,
newer
yes.
models, they don't come out. So that I always
Yes.
take out the middle console because I can literally fit a cooler right
Hmm.
there, and then I have access. I mean, it's literally like a pretty decent sized cooler, and I use
Hmm.
these big ice packs to keep it very cold.
Hmm.
I'm a little uptight about temperature, so I even put a thermometer in there because I want to know
Okay. Yep.
because that way when we get somewhere, I know everything's still
Hmm.
good. So I always
Yes.
put a thermometer in there. But really, it's just I pack a ton of stuff. Any kind of like
Hmm.
cheese sticks. I do a lot of squeeze yogurts, things that are easy to
Hmm.
pass back to my kids that they eat
Yes.
on a regular
Yep.
basis. Now I do buy
Yep.
bars, which I'm not a huge person on bars at home, but
Hmm.
on a trip, I'll let the kids
On a
pick out
trip.
like
Yep.
some Z bars or Kind bars, and they think that's like really exciting.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. I think that's a key too, is when you have things that are novel where you're like,
Yes.
ooh, we don't normally get that. Then it keeps
Hmm.
them, because you also have to, you're not only feeding everyone, but you also have to keep spirits up, right?
Oh yeah.
Like sometimes you're like, oh, you get that person that's, are we there yet? And you've been driving 45 minutes or something. And I think fun foods are also a way to do that. One thing we did on our last trip was I was taking a turn driving, and Kyle, my husband, was driving, and he was just throwing out random trivia questions for the kids,
Yeah.
just like making up stuff. And then whoever got it right, he would toss a single M&M to them. And
Yes.
they like that occupied them for so long because not only were they getting this little treat, which is so small, but also like asking the questions and stuff. So just trying to keep spirits up and tummies full of food that they're used to having while we're driving makes a big difference on how the experience of the trip goes.
Even done car taste tests where I'll bring little Dixie cups. And if you do like a blueberry, a raspberry, a strawberry, it's amazing how kids, if they don't know what's going in their mouth, they can't guess what it is.
Yeah, that's
So
so
we'll pass it
fun.
back and have your neighbor next to you be like, put the little berry in your mouth. Or even I've done it
Yeah.
with Skittles too, with candies.
Yep.
But
Yep.
they have to chew it and then announce what they think is in their mouth. And you think you'd know the difference between a blueberry and a raspberry, but some of my kids don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And just the novelty, the fun of it
Yeah.
is it keeps people entertained. I love that. So when you're buying things ahead of time, like before you leave, you
Yes.
said like you buy bars, whatever. Are there anything that, like when you pack those individual lunches, anything that you have found is consistently an easy meal to put together to have for them?
It really depends on my kid because so many of my kids have different preferences. I'd say like the older my kids get, the more open they are to like wraps or sandwiches. I don't know why my younger kids, they do not like a sandwich. They do not like
Okay.
when I,
Yep. My younger
like
two do not.
standard. Yeah, I don't know. There's like a threshold. Some once you get to an older kid, they're like, I will eat a regular sandwich or a regular
Mhm.
wrap. But my younger kids like it more deconstructed. So they want like
Mhm.
cheese, the meat. So it's more
Yep.
like a tackle box.
Yep.
So we do more of that for the little ones, and then my older kids,
Mhm.
they'll eat like a sandwich or a wrap that
Yeah.
they would eat on a regular basis.
Yep. I always say that if I make a sandwich, I can like take one sandwich and split it between the older kids and the younger kids because the older ones will be like, "Oh, I'll eat the bread," and the younger ones will be
Yeah,
like, "I'll eat the meat and cheese out of it." Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Everybody has those different preferences. Yeah, I do the
yeah.
same thing. And I always say I bring a peanut butter and jelly kit, is what I call it, because no part of it needs to be like kept perfectly cold. And then I can have it on the go. And so I have that where I stick like out of everything that we have, like even if we have it in the cooler or whatever, I'll have just like a Walmart bag that has like a jar of peanut butter, a single butter knife, a loaf
Mhm.
of bread, and a jar of jelly. And so that's a good snack too. If
Yeah.
we're driving and someone's I'm not hungry, but it's not quite mealtime, I'll just half of a PB&J or something back to them and get them through that. Okay, so neither of us said that we're big flyers, but do you have
No.
any tips or things that you would bring if you were flying and couldn't bring some of the normal things that you drive with?
Sure. So I actually did fly myself recently on a girls' trip, which was super fun. And I actually have some food allergies. I can't have gluten or dairy. So
Okay.
I went and bought some bars. I actually don't really love
Hmm.
bars or even like beef sticks, but I went and bought those on purpose, knowing I might need that because honestly, you never know what you're going to get in an airport. Like
Yep.
on a road trip, typically you can always go out of your way and find a grocery store, but if you're in an airport and you're stuck. So
Yep.
I just brought things that were higher in protein
Hmm.
because typically you can find a chip, even a piece of like a banana, but it's harder to find
Hmm.
protein options. I
Hmm.
always try to like stick, and that's what I did. Brought along mostly protein things
Hmm.
just as like an emergency.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. I've only flown with all the kids once, and it was actually at night. So we like had already eaten dinner. I had
Yeah.
snacks in my bag. We flew at night. And we did Southwest, so they gave them a drink and a snack on the plane and stuff. So yeah, I don't have we're actually flying this summer one time, and I'm not a big flyer. And so I feel like I'll actually end up spending more on just trying to figure out what I need to buy while I'm at home but then
Hmm.
also what you have to then buy once you're there because you don't bring
Yeah.
stuff with you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's as two Midwest driving moms, we don't have a ton of flying
No.
tips and tricks. Okay, so when we get there, there's different types of places we could be staying, and each of those different things really changes how we can approach food, right? Like we would approach eating at a hotel completely differently than we would approach a rental. Do you have, let's start with hotel, because you just said that you had done that in Chicago. If you're in a hotel, you're probably going to end up eating out more than if you're at a rental or someone else's home. But do you have little ways that you've found to keep some of those eating costs low or still be able to have more of like grocery store food rather than takeout food, even while in just a standard hotel room?
Absolutely. So, number one, I think you need to find the right hotel. My family, we do road trip quite a bit, and we always look for a hotel, if it's possible, like a Residence Inn that has a full size refrigerator. We went
Hmm.
actually on a big trip to New York City last summer, and we stayed at a Residence Inn in downtown New York City, which it can be expensive in New York
Hmm.
City, but we had a full size refrigerator and we stacked that thing. We went to the grocery store. Of course, it was like Whole Foods, so it's expensive
Hmm.
groceries,
Hmm.
still cheaper than eating out,
Yep.
and bought everything for breakfast, several like snackies. We did a dinner in the hotel one night because honestly, at the end of the day, and I think you touched on this when you were on your beach trip, at the end of the day, when we're all tired, it's very comforting and nice to like get clean, take a shower, put on
Hmm.
some pajamas, and just chill out. We
Yep.
don't need to go out and then find more food.
Yep.
We even used it as a supplement. So one day I remember we picked up some of the New York style pizza, but then we took
Hmm.
that back to the hotel and we had like salads and fruits and
Hmm.
veggies to round out the meal than just eating
Yep.
a slice of pizza on the curb.
Yep.
So for us, it's really finding like the right hotel. Even if we were to fly somewhere, I would still look for a
Hmm.
place like a Residence Inn because I could go buy groceries or even
Yep.
have groceries delivered. You could even
Hmm.
do that. We ended up having a Whole Foods right around the corner, but even if that wasn't, you could have them delivered to your hotel. I
Yep.
know people that do that at Disney World, even if it's not, you don't have a car, you could absolutely go and have them sent to your
Yeah.
room and then you have stuff.
Yeah.
For me, that makes a huge difference. I also travel always with like specific things. You mentioned bringing things with you.
Hmm.
Always bring a sharp, like chef's knife. I always
Hmm.
bring cutting boards because I just don't
Hmm.
trust the cutting
Yep.
boards that are at a
Yep.
rental or anywhere.
Mhm.
I always bring a big saute pan because you can do a ton of stuff with that.
Mhm.
And I bring a big electric griddle because
Mhm.
a griddle, you could toast on things on it. You can warm a
Yep.
pizza on it. I put bacon on it. I'll pre cook bacon and then I'll just warm it
Mhm.
up on the griddle. So to me, those are like my top things to bring no matter
Yep.
where I'm going, as long as we're driving somewhere.
Yep. We stayed in Colorado at a home two suites.
Yes.
And that was another one that all six of us could stay in one room. And I knew it had a kitchenette, but I didn't quite
Mhm.
know what that meant. It means
You
different
never do.
things
You're like, you go in
to every
blindly.
hotel. Yeah, you go in blindly. And it had a full fridge. It had a microwave, but it also had a dishwasher with like
Yes.
ceramic plates and cups and all of that stuff.
Mhm.
And then you could request a hot plate if you wanted to do boil
Yeah.
noodles or whatever. And so I was very impressed with that because it had like metal silverware and all of that
Yep.
stuff. So it truly did feel more like an apartment, but it was the cost of a hotel. And they had a lobby breakfast too. And so that was great. Yeah. So not all hotels are created equally, I think
No. No.
is the big thing. And yeah, and just with our family size too, I'm always looking for whatever says suites in the name.
Me too.
And that generally tends to give you a little bit more of the amenities than just like a standard room. I know some people, I don't know what the hotel would say about this, but I do know some people who bring like crock pots or like air fry. Crock pot is fine to me. Air fryers, I would be very nervous about starting a smoke alarm with that thing. But those kind of things, you could bring small things with you to make it a little bit more like home as well. But yeah, I
Absolutely.
do.
I've actually brought a couple times when we've stayed and we have not had the option of a residence inn or like a hotel that has a fridge. I've actually brought a
Yep.
cooler and then
Mm-hmm.
my electric griddle, which I actually
Yep.
got pushback on that last year, but I'm like, I'm not cooking like a huge meal. I'm basically
Yep.
reheating things that I
Yes.
already had from home. And so to me, as long as you bring a cooler, and I always encourage people with a cooler to put a thermometer in there because you really
Yes.
don't want to be dancing around food
Yep.
safety when you're traveling.
No, last place you want to be with food
No.
poisoning is a hotel room.
And in that case, I purposely will not, if I know I'm not going to a place that has a freezer, I only put ice. So I will do
Okay.
big bags and I'll bring extra gallon size bags that we can
Mhm.
replenish ice through the trip
Yep.
because you have no way to make your freezer packs cold again.
For sure. Yeah. So that was probably out of all the options of places you could stay. That's probably the tougher one, but it is
It is.
doable.
Oh
I
yeah.
think that's a big key to that eating on the road or eating out with your family or preparing food on the road is to have the problem solving mentality of, okay,
Yes.
it might be a little unconventional or people might be like, oh, I never thought of that or I would never do that or whatever. But if you can get creative and think about for a minute, okay, it's not obvious to me how I could serve breakfast for 7 in a hotel room. But let me think about it a little bit. And we can generally come up with things where we're like, oh, okay, like this doesn't need to be refrigerated and this would still give them a meal or
Mhm.
whatever. So I think that's an approach that I try to take to it is the solution is not obvious to me, but that doesn't mean that there isn't one, that I can't come up with a way to put it together and put that meal together. Okay, so hotels, you do what you can, you eat out maybe a little
Right.
bit more than you would in a rental, but you still
Right.
can. And I think a big takeaway to before we move off of that point is that the hotel you choose really matters because I
I
think
agree.
if you just think, oh, a hotel is a hotel, sometimes I've gotten to hotels before where there was no fridge and because I didn't know that ahead of time, I was like, I don't even know what to do. Like, what do I do when I don't have a fridge? So I think looking, or if it's not obvious on their website, just like giving the front desk a call and asking, are there microwaves in your room? Are there fridges in the room? Because that really can make a big difference. Even if there's not a full kitchen, it makes a big difference on what you can serve and what you can keep cold with what's in the room.
Absolutely.
Okay, the next one is my personal favorite, which is rentals. I
Yes.
love staying at rentals that
So
feel
do
more
I.
like a home, have a full kitchen. So let's talk about that. What do you look for in a rental when it comes to like how well you can prep your food and eat at the house?
So for a rental, I'm always looking for a lot of rooms because I have 5
Hmm.
kids. I want the whole
Hmm.
point of getting a rental is so we can have some space.
Yep.
But when I'm going into a rental situation, I try to think about how much I can prep in advance because I actually talked about this on my Instagram recently where I said I go into trips like this thinking it's more of a business trip. I'm a mom. I'm about to go on a business trip. My kids are going on vacation. But
Hmm.
I am the one there's a saying like if people don't go with the flow. If you think you're going with the flow, it's because someone's behind you making it feel like
Moving
you're
you.
going with the flow. I'm that person. In this situation, I'm the person that's making everyone think they're going with the flow, but it's really me
Hmm.
doing these things and my husband. So I try to prep as much in advance so that it's easier on me. Like this week, I said I'm getting ready for next week. I just this morning cooked 4 trays of bacon,
Hmm.
pre-cooked all of it. I didn't make it too crispy. I'm gonna freeze it in a flat layer so that when we
Hmm.
get to where we're going next week, I can literally just heat it up in the oven. It'll be
Hmm.
super quick and easy. I'm not cooking bacon from scratch.
Yeah.
Same with any meat. Anything I don't want to have like raw meats,
Hmm.
rice, pasta, things that I can just cook, put it into a thin layer in my freezer in a gallon bag. That travels super easy, defrosts really well. And then
Mhm.
I can, when we get there, I will do a grocery order of fruits, vegetables, dairy,
Yep.
eggs, that kind of thing. But those are all things that really don't require a ton of prep on my side once we're
Yeah.
actually where we're going to be.
Yep. I think there's also like sometimes we get tricked into thinking that there's like this or this where it's like totally home cooked from scratch or eating
Right.
out. And I tried to show at my most recent trip that like I was still mostly going to the grocery store. I think we only ate out like 2 of our dinners the whole week. I'm mostly going to the grocery store, but while I'm at the grocery store, I'm leaning more into convenience than I do at home. And that's, I think,
Absolutely.
what can also make
Yes.
it more of a break for the person who is doing the cooking, like you or I.
Yeah.
At home, I'm not necessarily going to always go for the bagged salad or the pre cut something. But while we're on vacation, I can lean into those a little bit more and still know that I'm not spending anywhere close to what I would be spending if we were eating that meal out. And so just doing simple things like the frozen garlic bread. I bought like a plain pack of chicken breast that I just bought like a couple seasonings to put on it. And then I had
Sure.
strawberries and a bag salad. So my prep was so minimal. It was like stick the garlic bread in, I pan seared the chicken breasts, and then the strawberries and the bag salad were like no prep basically. So it's still like a very inexpensive meal for the family at a grocery store as opposed to at a restaurant. But the amount of prep that I maybe would be used to doing at home, I'm not doing on this meal.
100% agree. And there's ways, I think there's lots of little ways you can do that. I will even find myself, I'll buy like paper products, just
Mhm.
even if our rental has silverware and stuff,
Yep.
sometimes I'm like, let's just buy paper,
Yep.
spend four
Hmm.
bucks on some paper plates, especially if
Hmm.
we're gonna be taking them down to a beach or going outside.
Yep.
Like it's just easier than trying to like wash this less dishes for me anyway.
Yep.
Even though when I say it's like a business trip, I know it's still a family vacation, but it's not to me, I'm not going there to just relax the whole time. Like I'm still gonna be
Right.
momming just at a
Right.
different location.
Right. Yeah. And like at our most recent one, we had not, it had been quite a while since we had stayed in a condo that like looked out at the ocean. And so the perspective I tried to take was I could be doing these dishes while looking at the
Yes.
side of a house in Illinois, or I could be doing
Yep.
these dishes looking at the ocean. So like that perspective is everything too. Of there are ways to not have it be so black or white of we have to go all into cooking from scratch and having a million pots and pans to wash versus going out. There's a middle ground that can balance saving money and eating things that we prefer with not having to have it be as much work as what I'm used to at home.
I 100% agree. Yeah. And Costco, I just this week, I bought some. They have that Kevin's brand. They have a couple of
Yes.
packaged, like it's fully cooked meat. I don't typically buy that in my regular life, but I bought 2 packs of those to bring with us next
Hmm.
week. It's like meat that's ready to go. I literally put it in
Yep.
my freezer and then I'll just pull it out when we get there and there's a
Yep.
dinner.
Yeah, for sure. So at a rental like that, my personal approach is that like breakfast is very low key. Lunch is either a sandwich or leftovers. And then dinner is like the one meal that I maybe put a little bit of more effort into. Do you have an approach of these are our go-to standard? Like we don't rock the boat with breakfast. We just do consistent things. What are those things for you guys when you're at a rental?
Yeah, breakfast I keep very normal. I try to
Hmm.
honestly do what we do at home because I know typically if we're on a trip, we're like go out and about doing things, even if we're just at a beach, we're going to be out and doing things. I want people to feel well. So
Hmm.
my kids they don't typically feel well if all they eat is like a donut. So they might get some donuts, but they're all going to have a piece of sausage, some bacon,
Hmm.
maybe an egg with that. So that's breakfast is all very consistent with
Hmm.
what we do at home. Typically, lunch and dinner depends on what the day is. So
Hmm.
oftentimes I'll even pack lunches. Saves us so much time, honestly,
Hmm.
because the amount of time it takes to go find a restaurant, sit
Hmm.
down, things
Hmm.
for my kids,
Hmm.
literally an hour and a half to 2 hours sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially
And if you're in a big tourist area,
yes.
sometimes you
Oh
get
yeah.
there and then you're like, okay, your table will be ready in 45 minutes or whatever. And it's, I could have cooked a meal and been all the way done in 45 minutes.
Yeah, there goes 3 hours of our day, like on our
Hmm.
trip. And
Hmm.
I actually enjoy. I think it's fun. When we were in New York, we actually went to Tavern on the Green for dinner one night, but it
Hmm.
was like the experience of it too. So it was
Yep.
fun. We went and sat down. So I'm not opposed. To me, you can save money and then go splurge on a fun, fancy meal for
Yep.
my big family. So it's
Yep.
like you were saying, it's a give and take. So breakfast definitely standard. Lunch I try to pack to bring with us depending on what we're doing. And then
Hmm.
dinner, like you do, is typically the bigger thing. Or I have a couple times we've been near a Whole Foods and they have awesome salad bars. That's a hack. If
Yep.
you are ever in a city, like a bigger city, and
Hmm.
they have a Whole Foods, don't
Hmm.
sleep on the salad bar because they have a hot bar even where
Hmm.
they even had like chicken strips and stuff.
Hmm.
It was my kids loved going there. It was
Hmm.
Whole Foods is not cheap, but it's
Hmm.
certainly less expensive than eating at like a restaurant. So that was
Yep.
like a happy medium where we all went to this big salad bar. We got our meals,
Hmm.
and so that was a halfway like got a grocery store dinner, but I didn't actually
Hmm.
cook anything that time.
Yeah, for sure. Publix is very similar. That's what we
Oh, okay.
did Publix was right across the street from our rental in Alabama over spring break, and we don't have Publix at home in
Neither do
Illinois.
we. Yeah.
And it was the same thing of a salad bar, or they call them pub subs, and there's 4 or 5
Oh, okay.
different like
Yeah.
Subway sandwiches that you can get like a half size or a full size. And so same kind of thing is like you're in a grocery store. And so I would grab those and then just grab like a 2 pound container of strawberries or something. And that
Yeah.
was lunch. So yeah, I agree that going into grocery stores doesn't necessarily mean that you're signing yourself up to cook the full meal.
Oh yeah. You're not cooking for 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Do you just play it by ear day by day on when you want to eat out versus eat at home? Or do you set like a rhythm of, okay, we're going to eat out 3 times? So how do you guys approach that?
It really depends on the trip. If we're traveling just our family, I'm in control then. If we're the extended family or something, that's
Mm.
when we typically will talk about things in advance. Plus, you
Yep.
probably need reservations because it's such a
Yep.
big group. If we're just talking about my family, typically we try to eat most meals cooked at the hotel, at the
Hmm.
rental, wherever we are. But like for next week, we're actually going to be in Washington, D.C. one of the days. And I just know there's no
Yep.
way we'll be back. I'm planning,
Yeah.
we're going to eat out that night. I've already got a
Hmm.
couple options on my phone. I've made a couple
Hmm.
reservation options. I'll try and look at the itinerary and then make that kind of plan.
Hmm.
If it's possible, we'll probably try to eat
Hmm.
at the hotel just because at the end of the long day, and
Hmm.
honestly, even that day, I'm guessing we'll all eat
Hmm.
dinner. And I'll bet you by the time we get back to the hotel, everyone's going to want a snack.
Yep.
I've
Yep.
already mentally thought about what kinds of snacks I'm going to throw at
Hmm.
people at 9 p.m.
Hmm.
when everyone's hungry
Hmm.
and tired.
Especially if you do something like DC and everybody walks like 8 miles in a day or whatever,
Exactly.
then you're
Yes.
very ready for some fuel. So you
Yeah,
mentioned, do you ever do extended family like trips with
we
multiple
do.
family groups?
Oh yeah, we last summer we actually went to the Outer Banks with my
Yep.
entire big family, and we were at a huge house rental, and we ended up divvying up the dinners
Hmm.
amongst my siblings and my parents, and then a lot of us prepped. I like I did. We prepped the meat in advance, froze it,
Hmm.
and then brought that along, and then did a huge
Hmm.
grocery order when we got there for
Yep.
things like all the different sides. But to me, I don't want to deal with raw meat like when I'm
Yep.
at a rental. And even if I don't, I either will cook it at home or I'll just prep it all. Like I'll have it all
Hmm.
portioned out with seasonings or
Hmm.
marinades. If there's a
Hmm.
grill, I'll literally have all the meat ready so we can just open it up and put it on the
Grill
grill.
all of it. Yep.
Yes. I even
Yep.
made bread dough and I froze the bread dough before the second rise. And then I just pulled it out and let it sit in a bowl and heat up. And it was perfect. So anything I can possibly do at home, I want to
Hmm.
do that. So I don't have to do that when I'm at a house rental because you don't know what you're walking
Yep.
in, what kind of house
Right.
it's going to be.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, we do the same thing when we pretty much each of our families take every other summer trip and
Mhm.
we're on opposite schedules. And we do the same thing where it's each family unit takes one night and then we maybe do one night out or something. And
Sure.
because we have bigger families, like that covers all of the nights. And maybe the final night you do clean out the fridge,
Oh,
everybody
yeah. We do
eats
that too.
leftovers or
Yep.
whatever. And I found that I feel like, unlike when we travel just us, I actually do truly get a break from cooking in that situation because while it might be a big task to cook dinner for 40 people or whatever, then you're done. Then, like the
Yeah,
next
that's
night,
true.
somebody else is on the hook for dinner or somebody else has to plan it. So, that's a good tip for anybody who's maybe considering whether it's extended family or even just friend groups. You have a couple families
Sure.
together traveling instead of saying everybody. I think it's so much more complicated to do everybody's on their own because then you're
Oh,
sharing like
gosh.
one
Yes.
kitchen and you're trying to do multiple things. So I love the idea of everybody takes one night and we kind of message or make a shared note before the
Yep.
trip so that we don't make the same dinner twice in a row or whatever. But yeah, that's a great way to do it. And then when you're sharing those responsibilities, you don't have to feel like you're doing it as much, but everybody still gets fed.
Exactly.
Okay, the last one is staying with friends or family. So, how do we do that? Like, I know sometimes some people probably have people that they go and stay with who they just cover all of it because they're like, I'm the host. And so this is what I do. But do you have any experience with doing that where you also participate in like the grocery shopping or the meals when you're staying with someone you know?
Sure. So my parents used to live up in Michigan. They actually live here in Cincinnati now. But when they did, I used to take my kids up to Michigan all the time in the summer, especially when we lived in Peoria. I would drive there with the kids for several weeks. And my parents, excellent hosts, but honestly, with them, it was easier because I had the kids. I could take over the mental
Yep.
energy of planning things and prepping just because I knew what everyone wanted to eat. But then, of
Hmm.
course, my mom was like my wingman. I would say,
Yep.
let's do this and this. And then to me, the key there is communication because, like you
Yeah.
said, you don't want to have multiple people in the kitchen trying to prep around each other. Like it might be, especially if you're not used to it, it might be uncomfortable at first to say, let's talk about this up front. But like I always tell my
Hmm.
kids, to be unclear is to be unkind. Let's be
Yeah.
clear. Let's put it
Yeah.
all out there. How's this going to go and make a plan? Because at the end of the day, we all got to eat.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I think it makes it so much if you do that before you actually arrive, especially going back
Exactly.
to rentals with other family units, I like talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
it before the trip actually starts just makes it so much better for everyone.
Absolutely.
So staying with friends, staying with family, and that's something I like to do. Is I know that some people, when they're hosting, they really default to, oh, it's my responsibility to like feed everyone. I like to, if I'm
Hmm.
staying with someone before the trip happens, I like to say, hey, I'd love to cook one dinner for everybody, even if we're staying with people who love to cook as well, just as a way of saying thank you, as a way of showing that I appreciate that you're letting me stay in your house or whatever. And so I know I did that in Colorado when we went and stayed with family. Was like they like to cook, they like to prep food, but I was like, hey, I'll do a big spaghetti night for everybody. And
Sure.
then it's so easy to just run to the grocery store. Get spaghetti is almost always my go-to because you can count out how many people you have to feed, put it together. It's so easy. And
Sure.
again, it's that reminder that we don't have to rock the boat or be like star chefs. We can just like, get food on the table. And
It's
what
just dinner.
matters more
Yeah.
is the connection. Yep. Yeah.
It's
It's
just
just
dinner.
dinner.
My
Yeah.
go-to is a Mexican night. I'll do like the
Mhm.
ground beef and then beans, and then it's kind of because kids love everything separate. So my who
Mhm.
wants just the meat can have that. If they want all the fixins, they can put it all on there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that's a nice way to just, I think by saying it ahead of time instead of just like showing up and then being like, oh,
Yeah.
I dread the question where it's like 4 o'clock and everyone
Ugh.
just now starts talking about, oh, what do we want to do for dinner? Because I'm like, okay, first of all, we're probably eating out because it's already like an hour from the meal time. So yeah, I love planning it ahead of time, talking about it
Me
ahead
too.
of time, knowing what the expectations are, even if they're different than what I would prefer by myself. At least if I know it, then I can roll with it.
I know it's hard for me when people don't want to talk about it, and I'm thinking, but
Mhm.
we all got to eat.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You can like sense what's coming. You're like, okay,
Yes.
I know that we're either going to go out, which we don't want to do, or I'm going to
Yeah.
end up just tossing something together while everybody's, oh, maybe we can do this or maybe we could do this. Yes. I'm much
And we
more,
have five.
I'm,
I have 5 kids. Like it doesn't
yeah.
just happen.
Yeah. As soon as the first kid says I'm hungry, it's already too late.
It's too late.
You should have already had it.
Now
Yeah.
we're all eating snacks. Now everyone's just snacking.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. I love that. Natalie, do you have any other big tips for things that you've been like, okay, along the way, being a mom of five, as we travel a lot, these are lessons that I've learned that I feel like are maybe less common that people could learn from or could really take as they go into this big summer travel season?
Sure. So I guess some takeaways. I think the biggest thing for me is to plan in advance. And we've been touching on that throughout this episode, just talking about go into it with knowing what your options are. And then even talking, whoever you're traveling with, whether it's your spouse or partner or a friend group, communicating in advance. I'll talk to my husband, Chris, we'll say, how do you see this going? And
Hmm.
that has saved me on so many, I'm sure saved him because he might have a different vision for how the day is going to go versus how I think it's going to go. And especially when it comes to money, spending money, because when we were in New York City last year, we talked about that before the trip, saying, where are we going to spend our money? Because at the end of the day, there is only so much to bring it home to talking about debt. There is only so much money for these trips. And so if I can find a way to save money that in a way that's still fun for our family, then I want to do that because I want to be able to still go and spend money on the fun dinner when we went to the Tavern on the Green or the cool
Yep.
experience when we were in the city. Because we didn't go below $100 on a breakfast no one really wanted to eat. So having those planning in advance and having those conversations before you are somewhere to me makes such a huge difference. And then giving yourself grace because there might be a time when you go and buy some groceries and then you end up
Hmm.
being stuck somewhere or being somewhere else and end up doing something different. So I try not to overbuy groceries. I
Hmm.
try not to, especially if it's a situation where I necessarily can't bring it all home. If I can bring it home, I'm not going to overbuy, but I'm not so worried about it. But I don't really want to overbuy things because then that's also losing
Yep.
money.
Yes.
But I always do factor in the drive home because typically I've prepped everything. We're all excited. So for the drive there, I've got all kinds of great snacks ready. But then when it's time to come home, it's who wants the leftover pizza from 2 days ago? No one wants that in the
Yep.
car ride. So I try to also factor in, if it's possible, the drive home. And I'll spend an hour in the hotel or in the rental house the day before we leave to go back home, prepping those things. Because sometimes that drive home, everyone's sad to be leaving, everyone's maybe tired, and
Yep.
they need some more vegetables and fruit maybe in their life.
Hmm.
It's good to spend that time prepping. So I'd probably it's really preparing things and having those conversations.
Yeah, for sure. To touch on that, well, that's something that we didn't bring up clearly. Do
Yeah.
you budget differently for groceries or food when you're eating out? Or do you just say, hey, if I stick to what I know, it's going to work out to be similar to what I do normally?
I do tend to think on a trip, I expect to spend more money just because
Yeah.
we're going to be in a place that I don't have access. I buy a lot of my food at
Hmm.
Costco in bulk, and I'm not
Yep.
going to go buy a bulk order.
Yep.
I might
Yep.
actually, if I'm on a big family trip, I might go to Costco. But that
Yep.
was with a bunch of families. But typically, I'm not going to Costco and buying like a huge quantity of something. So it's probably going to cost more money just because I'm
Hmm.
buying a different place. But it's still going to be cheaper for us probably than
Yeah.
doing the restaurant.
Yep. Yep. Totally
Yeah.
agree. Totally agree. Natalie, where can people find you if they want to keep following along with more easy ways to feed their family and spend time together?
Sure. I am on Instagram and my handle is Home Begins with Love.
Okay.
And we'd love to have you.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie. I know that this will be a very timely conversation. It's going to come out right at the beginning of July. And I know
Oh,
people will
perfect.
be road trips, driving, all kinds of things that they can take, even take one or two of these tips and feel like they're not spending so much money or so much time thinking about
Yes.
what to eat while they're traveling.
Sounds great.
Thanks for listening to the Debt Free Mom podcast. If you want to join me as a guest on the show, go to dfmpodcast.com. The Debt Free Mom podcast is hosted by me, Carly Hill. Music for this episode was written by Kyle Hill. Hit subscribe wherever you're listening to join in with every new episode as we grow our confidence and contentment in our personal finances.